right? So it all comes down to what shows up where and when, right? If there's 12 volts on this output side of that fuel pump, well, that ground got damaged. Here's where voltage drop testing happens, right? We test from the battery or even from this ground location to that lead going in. What should it be? It should be pretty close to 0, right? Doing voltage drop. If it shows 1 or 2 volts, that ground is faulty. Same thing goes on this end. We go from this point to the battery positive, and we should have also roughly close to 0. If not, we're losing voltage, and this fuel pump is running at 10 volts instead of 12 or 13, and that could be why it died, right? So you can see all the steps that come in and all the different ways we can go about finding out what's going on, right? Reasonable? Okay, so let's say we have our signal coming in here, activating this, and our fuel pump's running, and we have pressure, right? So now that goes down to, do we have fuel injectors that are spraying fuel into the engine, right? Because we had spark, so we don't have to pay any attention to that. It's there. So we got to figure out why fuel's not making it where it needs to go. So I'm going to close this one, and we are going to go into the injectors. And I saw fuel injectors over here. That's spark plugs. Spark plugs. I didn't see injectors. I saw spark plugs. But here's injectors. All right, so we have our injectors, right? Different injector controls for each injector, which makes this sequential fuel injection. We can see that they are powered in pairs, right? So these 4 come from this fuse, and these 4 come from this fuse. You can see they're hot and run and start, so only when we turn the key on are we getting power to it, but we see that the computer's controlling the ground side. So the power should stay what it is all the time, and the ground side's the one that's going to fluctuate. So first step, right, is we use a Noid light. We take one of these, we put it in between these 2 wires, and we crank the engine. It should flash. If it flashes, it shows the presence of power and ground. If power's here, the ground is the one that's being fluctuated. That's what's causing the light to flash on and off. If we have that on all of them, right, because at this point, we don't want to trust just one. We want to make sure that we have that at more places. We know that injector's being electrically operated and fuel's not making it through, right? If it doesn't flash, we either lost this control or we lost this, right? So if it doesn't flash, the easiest thing to check first is, do we have power at it? We look for power on the pink wire. If we don't have power on the pink wire, we check that fuse. Well, let's do it this way. Let's say we don't have power on the pink wire. We check this one. We have power on that one, but we don't have power on this one. Well, now that means that that fuse is good. I don't have to check it. I have to do an inspection of this pathway because maybe a mouse ate that wire. But let's take that a little bit different. If this one wasn't working, all of these should be working and the vehicle should still run, right? So the fact it doesn't run, chances of having 2 problems in the same car, not likely. Can happen, but not usually. So if we have power here and we have ground, we have flashing Noid lights from all of this stuff, we check the other bank, which we presume will be the same, but we still check it. So we find a couple of these have flashing Noid lights too. Let's see what happens, right? So if we have both, our next thing is to find out, are these injectors flowing fuel? Well, you remember that balance test we did, right? We took our little timing device that we controlled the injector with, and we checked fuel pressure. We brought fuel pressure up. We hit the button. Fuel pressure dropped down. We start mapping how much fuel is flowing through these. We go, and it doesn't drop. Guess what we found? We found clogged fuel injectors. Now, what's the reason that we could clog all the fuel injectors, right? That would be strange, right? To have a no start because of all the fuel injectors. Someone found gas in his shed, right? And decided to use the fuel that was in his shed that's like 17 years old and had spiders growing in it, right? And he clogged up all his fuel injectors at the same time. That's the kind of thing that would cause that type of scenario, right? So we find clogged injectors. I just watched a video. BMW 850i is one of my favorite cars, right, from the 90s. And someday I'll get one, right? So the 850 is a 12-cylinder. Well, I watched this guy, very entertaining on YouTube, in Germany, who was fixing one. Car sat for 16 years. He got the car in. He was working his way through it. Car was a no start. Ended up finding 12 clogged fuel injectors, right, from the car sitting. They varnished up from sitting a long time. So there's one area, right? So we can have that. We could have, if we're not flashing, right, and we have power here, well, then we looked what's here. Now, these are transistors that are doing this switching inside this computer. If this computer's dead, right, no grounding happens. Power just flows straight through the other side, no flashy. Computer's bad. So what do we got to check if a computer's bad? Right? So let's take that and let's move that somewhere else. Let's take this, make this go away. Go back here. Let's go all the way back to the top.